Hey traders, let's take a look at a few assets together and see what we can make out of this. If we look at the Aussie and the US dollar, and we start with a low time frame, you can see some higher lows in this area and then the outbreak. Let's put a line so you can see it too. Now you can see the bounces here, 1, 2, 3, and even here the breakout, and then the retracement back up, and the lower low, and then a retracement back up and a lower high. So you can do this as practice when you exercise and open your charts, do these things, place your lines, and pay attention to highs and lows and the bounces and the breakouts. So you can see the pattern here. So right now, if you look at it this way, you can see that it's trending down. But if we go to a higher time frame, like if we remove our lines and go to the weekly time frame, this is why it's good to shift between the time frames so you can see get the bigger picture. So you don't get surprised when price suddenly rushes towards an area that you weren't expecting. But if you look at different time frames, you will know why it happens. So here we went from the 5-minute time frame to the weekly. Now suddenly we see that it's not trending down, it's actually trending up. You have the higher lows, and last time it was there, it dropped, but this time it dropped down to the trend line and it's continuing up again. So of course it could come down and break, but we know that it's also possible that it comes up and breaks this line here, this resistance line. And we can look at the monthly charts. For example, you see the big drop here, the big drop at the resistance line here. So price hasn't broken this area yet. Of course it could move down. So if it moves up, we know our target is up here, and if it gets broken, wait for confirmation. Most probably it's going to come back down. And if it doesn't, you can trade the highs, the higher lows. So then you know what happened. Then the next resistance is probably up here. So remember, this is a monthly chart, so the distance here is actually quite big. It might look small on the chart, but it's quite a long distance. So the next resistance would be probably here if it breaks. So now we have our targets, we can trade thereafter. We can obviously go to lower time frames as well. You can see on the hourly, for example, here there is a support in this area. You're gonna have to see what happens. And if we move down again, remember our lines that we drew, that price is trending down. So if it comes back up and breaks this line, then we could guess that price is possibly moving up towards our resistance line that we talked about just now. And depending on what expiries you use, how you trade, you can look at different time frames to set up potential expiries once these breakouts occur. The safest bet is to always trade at with good leverage, and that is at higher lows or lower highs, like in this case the lower highs, and in that case in the other trend line here that we talked about before, the higher lows. So let's go to the USDJPY. You can see that our trend line here got broken recently. This is, by the way, the same trend line for the daily. We have talked about this before. You can see that I've just adapted it after I adapted it to this few recent peaks, but it's pretty much the same thing as before. So a long-term trend line from way back, and it got broken. So obviously you ask yourself, where is it going again? And you can see the resistance area here, and kind of in this area, as you can see here, and even here, the big drop. So it's going up there. It might even reach up all the way up here to this EMA. I have an EMA 99 here. It's an indicator for where price is trying to move to, and it might come up there and then get pushed back down. Now, since this trend line is broken, of course we could see a potential uptrend, and we actually do already have an uptrend. Price is making higher lows, so your best bet is to stick with the trend and trend the higher lows. But be careful, because if it reaches one of these heavy resistance areas, then you might see a big drop. And I wouldn't be so surprised if price even came down all the way down to the trend line before moving up again. So there are multiple scenarios that can happen. So when it's moving up, you should go with the higher lows, and if it's moving down, go with the trade towards the target. So which would be your target? We will have to see that. Right now it's struggling to break, or rather it was struggling to break this area, and you can see it's already broken. You can see that here on my line, the big drop here. So it got already broken, so it's moving up rapidly, and I wouldn't be surprised if it came up, touched this area, even moved up. But we might have a potential trade here. But again, your safest trade is to go with the trend and trade up towards the target. Now, if we look at the EURUSD, I know that the pound is still dropping. It had a supporting area after Brexit. It was bouncing up and down, but it dropped. But EURUSD is still holding. Obviously, it dropped too, but it's still holding in the same area. You can see it's not trending that much, but even here on the daily, for example, you can see it's holding the trend line. It's now dropping. You might see a lower high, but be careful, because this area, you can see that it's been support for a long time, many times, and it's been resistance, and price even came below, but then it was a false breakout. So be very careful with this if you're going to trade it, because it could go up again even this time. So adjust your line based on the very lows, and don't get fooled by a false breakout. You can see it's already getting a little bit support, but then it could drop. If it drops, it's gonna probably drop heavily to the next level. So even here you can go with the trend. You can see again on the lower time frames you have a downgoing trend line. Price retraces back up and then drops. So we had a lower low and then a lower high. This one was a good trade, and then a false retracement divergence here, not a lower low, but a false divergence. Tried to fake a bullish movement, but then boom, it dropped again. So trade in the direction of the trend where you have your targets. I hope this helps, and you can use the same way of thinking on other assets, so I don't have to do all the assets. Whatever asset you like, set up your targets, look at different time frames as I did to get the bigger picture, and trade thereafter. Thanks for watching. Okana out.